What would you do if you were the last person in a Minecraft world that seemingly wants you gone? A world you have put countless hours into that's been the one solid constant in your life, only to be taken away from it by the game itself? Well, that's the predicament the player finds themselves in the Minecraft short film The Last Beta Player, which is, in my opinion, one of the best examples of beta Minecraft horror and the potential that the medium holds. In an era where most Minecraft ARG and unfiction stories are more science fiction than actual horror, this short film stands as a beacon of the simpler. So sit back, relax, and listen as I explore the fog-covered world of The Last Beta Player. The short film, released on the 11th of November 2023 by a YouTuber known as Mongster, starts with a panning montage of the player's creations in beta Minecraft, framed by the C418 track Excuse, which serves to establish the almost melancholic atmosphere that permeates the entire movie. As it pans through the village that this player must have built over the seeming weeks that this world seems to have been played on, the one ever-present motif is that of the fog, always far enough away to be largely unintrusive, but close enough to be an ever-present reminder of the inherent creepiness that possessed beta Minecraft. Normally only through the mood, however, as you'll see, the creepiness is very real in Mongster's world. The video then cuts to a screen recording with the player's webcam in the bottom left corner, always showing enough to let us know that he's there, but refraining from showing us his face, demonstrating a level of personal connection, but refraining from complete old MC Let's Player style. This demonstrates the more casual and personal style of the storytelling that permeates the entirety of the movie, further enhancing the horror in my opinion, as the protagonist is not some faceless, personality-less, amorphous blob for bad things to happen to. He instead demonstrates personality not only through his actions, like watching Minecraft YouTube videos on his phone while playing, and trying to reach out about the problems that he's experiencing in his beta world on sites like Reddit. Speaking of Reddit, the first proper shot of the film opens to a desktop featuring a Reddit post complaining about how his fog slider is broken. It reads, "Hey everybody, I've been playing beta 1.7.3 and the slider that controls fog is stuck. It won't change. Could this have something to do with the RAM I'm allowing to the game? Using multi-MC for reference." Lol, you know the game's been updated a few times in the last decade, right? The decision to lead the narrative with this frames the rest of the movie perfectly, demonstrating that even from the onset of the movie, something isn't right, and this theme of seeking outside advice for problems encountered within the game on Reddit is a reoccurring theme throughout the runtime of the short film. Also, on a side note, one extremely interesting fact is that you can find the Reddit post featured, posted under the Reddit account kdavidok9998. This has no real bearing outside of being a cool factoid. I just thought the fact that Mongster actually posted these instead of using something like Inspect Element really adds to the realism of the film. Additionally, the date is the 29th of October 2023, and this is important to keep track of the progression of the narrative. Continuing, the user then launches the game and enters his only world entitled Beta Town, a world that is 140 megabytes big, demonstrating the sheer amount of time dedicated to the singular town, and spawns in his house. He walks downstairs and checks his chest, ignores his dog, very rude actually, and proceeds outside. You can see that the house in which he spawned in is called Castle Von Spawn, which I suppose is apt. He then wanders through the village that he, presumably at least, created, populated by no one other than himself and various pumpkin-head lever-armed villagers. He carries on past the village into a forest covered from the sun by a blanket of leaves until he reaches his newest build project, some form of a tower, which he continues to build until he runs out of clay, after which he returns home to look for some. After failing to find some, he crafts a boat and sets off to find some. The video cuts to mid-boat journey and restarts with the protagonist finding some clay, his boat blowing up after touching one molecule of something other than water. Old boats were so bad. And after finishing his clay collection, he makes another boat and sets off again. He carries on his journey for clay, even continuing when night falls. After finishing up, the player seemingly realizes the danger of the night, beginning to fight the various mobs trying to kill him and fleeing from them after taking too much damage from skeletons. This continues overnight with a cycle of fighting mobs and running. However, the day soon comes and seems to provide some sort of refuge. That is until our poor protagonist stumbles upon a mysterious house that he did not build. He runs into quite a lot of these houses. At this point, you can tell that he is understandably freaked out. As he retreats to one of the houses, he logs out, and the first recording ends. So there's not a lot to go off right now, so I'm going to save my analysis until the end of the short film, or at least until more information crops up that I can actually, use to form a theory. But for now, I'd just like to say that if you've enjoyed the eerie atmosphere so far, go watch the rest of the film and come back. It's not that long, and if you enjoy Minecraft horror at all, if you don't, then why are you here? It's well worth the 50 minutes of your time. Also, if you could subscribe, that as well would be insanely appreciated, as I want to get into content creation with these types of videos, and your support would mean the world. Anyway, back to the video. The video cuts back to the desktop, and it is the next day, the 30th of October 2023, and much like the opening, it cuts to another Reddit post reading, "I found this structure village thing in my beta 1.7.3 world. I have no mods and I've never seen anything like it. Were these in the game at the time? Please answer." Yeah, you built it, Lamau. And I can't believe people still play this version. You gotta be like the last person on earth playing this right now. Well, these answers are mostly useless. At least the name of the short film comes from the second guy. However, there is one actual useful bit of information in the thread saying that this looks like an old prototype for village designs that was scrapped before the release of the adventure update. Not sure why they'd be in your game, because they were never added. Maybe you're playing an unofficial version or something. The reply had a link that led to photos that do indeed look like the strange houses that the protagonist encountered. After the player looks at the images, he loads back into the same place where he last logged off, in these strange prototype houses. He digs up some of the floors to make a sign that he places next to the part of the floor that he just dug up, simply saying, "Hello?" He then exits, digs up his crafting table, and walks off into the snow. The video cutting to him managing to find his way home to his village. He fights some mobs and makes some bread to refill his hunger, well, hearts, and then continues construction on the tower that prompted the clay journey to begin with, until, once again, he runs out of clay. He returns to his village after making new tools and stops in the same house he stopped in previously to drop off some items before returning to Castle Von Spawn. He wanders through the house until he comes to a trap door that leads to his mine, descending into the depths in search of presumably more iron. He seemingly wanders aimlessly in the winding labyrinth of beta caves, finding some ores like lapis and iron, representing some normality after the strangeness of the houses. However, of course, this seeming normalcy is merely the calm before the storm, as our protagonist finds an extremely suspicious 2x1 player-sized tunnel dug into a random section of the cave that he is in, of course accompanied by an equally terrifying cave sound. The player follows this cave in essentially total darkness. The only sounds audible are the ambient sounds of running water and footsteps and the occasional noise made by the uploader himself. This continues until the player starts to ascend and sees the light grow closer and closer until he reaches the surface. As he turns around to try and get his bearings, he sees it once again. Those same houses. Genuine confusion can be seen for the player looking at the cave and looking back at the houses repeatedly, as he takes several deep breaths to steady himself. He returns to the house where he left the sign and breaks the floor, only to find it completely repaired, with the sign missing from where he placed it. Before the protagonist even has time to ponder what the actual hell is going on, another awfully, or well-timed cave sound plays, sending him running once again with the video cutting. Once again, the recording picks back up again with him jumping into the water and seeing his structures. This time he sees his lighthouse first, a perhaps on-the-nose metaphor about the structure representing hope might work here, but I am not a writer. He swims back to the relative safety of his village and once again returns to his spawn castle, managing to make it back to his dog, where he takes a sigh of relief. However, any sense of safety he feels is gone after he walks outside again, only to see that the Castle Von Spawn sign is gone, replaced by the sign he left at the strange prototype houses, reading only, "Hello?" He stares in disbelief until interrupted by a noise IRL that seems to knock him into reality, with the video cutting to a later point with him wandering around his village, once again returning to the same house, and with him putting on iron to smelt and making arrows for his bow. You can tell that our protagonist is freaked out for his body language, heavy breathing being the most obvious sign, and the fact that he's making iron armor suggests that he is rightly terrified at the situation and seeking some form of protection. This is only going to get worse, however, as after making an iron chest piece, he hears walking sounds outside his house. He frantically goes outside, clicking wildly with his sword, as the oppressive darkness sets in on all sides, only kept somewhat at bay by the torches. However, the comfort from even that seems to be dwindling as the film progresses. He searches around his house, failing to locate the source of the footsteps, and so he decides to venture into the nearby aforementioned dark forest. Just a side note, but if this was me and I hadn't just deleted this world straight up, I would not be venturing into a forest with no light in the middle of the night in search of something that isn't meant to be in the game. Well, I don't know, maybe I'm just stupid or something. Anyway, as he stumbles through the forest in the dark, he gets a call from an unknown number. He picks up, but nothing can be heard, but still, it demonstrates that the events taking place within the protagonist's world are starting to directly affect his actual life. Whether through the call being from whatever entity is inside the game or not, it is having direct repercussion for the player's mental state. The player continues to stumble around in the dark, finding waves upon waves of mobs, continuing until he seemingly clears out the ones around him. However, he hears the same footsteps again, and spins around to find them, but is unable to. He continues until he sees a lone torch in the distance, but as he gets closer to it, it goes out like a player had punched it, leaving just the item on the ground. The player stares at it dumbfounded for a moment before approaching it, picking it up and continuing into the cave directly behind the torch. Carrying on into the cave, he places the torch and sees a descending passage downwards, to which he breaks the torch again and carries on down into the depths, periodically placing the torch back down to C. As he reaches the bottom of the passage, it levels out to a more natural cave, and the player leaves behind the torch, instead opting to use flint and steel as his method of lighting. This continues as he descends further into the cave, experiencing more apparent footsteps and another cave sound. However, he continues undeterred, coming across a pool of lava. However, he doesn't stay long, instead opting to build up to a passage above the lava, only interrupted by yet another cave sound. However, this doesn't seem to faze the protagonist as he crouches into the darkness, turning around to look at the latest fire he had placed, his only form of comfort in these winding caves. However, this is soon ruined by footsteps that sound directly behind him. He turns around, and once again there is nothing. The player continues further into the passage once more, walking along cautiously, but when he lights a fire again to see, music starts blaring, sending the player into a craze. Footsteps can be heard, but I'm unable to discern whether these are the players or anything else, but the implications are terrifying. Our protagonist makes a mad dash for the surface, spamming blocks and mining maniacally until he finally reaches the surface, the music an unwanted companion for the whole event, until eventually he reaches a sandy surface and exits out, the music following him till he fully exits the game. After catching his breath briefly, the player ends the second recording. There is a lot more to unpack in this section of the movie, but the main parts I want to cover are the seeming use of parts of Minecraft that were developed but not used, and they're abandoned or created as prototypes but never used in the final product. It is now apparent in the two main anomalies that plague this player's world. Those are the prototype villager houses that seem to be somewhat capable of manipulating the world, demonstrated by repairing themselves and moving the sign to Castle Von Spawn, but also the song present in the last part of the recording. The song is interesting as it is known as Calm 4, and is a part of the official Alpha soundtrack as it was created by Notch instead of C418, and was mostly used to test the soundtrack features in early Minecraft, but didn't find its way into the main game. Also, slight topic change, but whilst researching this video, I found this comment on the MC forums from May 2011 that reads, "The music, calm4.org, has a very small chance to play randomly, I believe. It has nothing to do with lightning creepers. I always imagined that if it played, it would scare me like crazy. I always pictured it playing in my strip mine or something, which would be creepy." I doubt it has any relevance to the movie itself. I just thought it was interesting that even 13 years ago people were thinking of the usage of the music in a scary setting, which I suppose is a testament to how unsettling alpha and beta Minecraft could be. But overall, at least using all the available information that we have right now, it seems that our protagonist's world is almost using all abandoned features against the player for whatever reason that's currently unknown. But let's hope we can get some form of answers in the third and final recording of the short film. The final recording starts the same as the previous two. His desktop with a Reddit post open, his own. It's important to note that the recording takes place a week after the last, on the 6th of November 2023, demonstrating that he most likely needed a break from the corrupted world after the last video, which I don't blame the guy, honestly. But this time, the post reads as follows. Does Calm 4 play in beta 1.7.3? I was in a cave when Calm 4, the unused song by Notch, began to play in my game. I thought it was never added to the game, but I was playing beta 1.7.3 and I heard it. I'm not using any mods and can't find any confirmation on this. Please help. Fortunately, he received no help, as his post was removed from the subreddit, so his cries for help went unanswered. And before he gets ready to load back into Minecraft, he seems to receive another call from an unknown number. However, this time he ignores it. This further demonstrates the disintegration of the barriers between the game and the real. As our protagonist gets drawn more and more into the mystery of his world, the barrier between where the game stops and he begins is starting to blur significantly. That does not stop him, however, as he loads back into the world onto a sandy patch of land next to his castle. The sign in front of the castle still saying hello. He wanders back through his village, this time the vast number of torches that kept the darkness at bay previously now strangely missing. The only thing keeping away perhaps the corruption of the world now being gone, the one place he considered home now starting to consider the player as an enemy as well. The player goes around smelting more ores until he goes to smelt gold. As the sun sets, he turns around to leave only to be met face to face with a creeper blowing up part of his village, further demonstrating the rapid deterioration of any place that was previously safe for him. After being spooked by the creeper scare, he wanders around his now completely dark village, fending off the mobs that are attempting to move in. After being reduced to 3 hearts, he attempts to find food, moving once again into the dark forest in search of sustenance, and once again he gets completely overwhelmed by mobs. This time, however, he is incapable of fending them off and instead opts to run. His sword breaking during the dash, continues running, using his fist to fend off what he can, but after a close fight with a spider, he is left with half a heart on an ice field, with no means to defend himself. His only saving grace is that the sun is starting to rise, and he has enough resources to build a small cobblestone hut. After constructing the makeshift building, he goes to get more wood, and is surrounded by animals that don't give food on death in beta. Perhaps it's the world mocking him, showing him all these animals that could give him food if he played a newer version, but due to choosing to play 1.7.3, he just can't. After retrieving wood from the nearby forest, he returns to his makeshift abode, still a hair's length away from death. He makes a chest, a door, and a fishing rod in an attempt to heal, and a new iron sword. He goes out to the edge of the ice to fish, but no matter how hard he tries, no matter how long he waits, no fish come. Even the very gameplay mechanics designed to make the game more accommodating have seemingly abandoned the protagonist. The idea of the very world itself rejecting the player is one that I'm especially interested in and will come back to in the conclusion, so hold on to that. Time further passes as the player watches a video from Dialco on strange structures to waste the time, waiting for some fish that will never come, until night eventually settles. With not even a single fish to his name, he skulks back to his makeshift hut. Now, the next part, I don't think I can do justice with my words, just describing it straight up, so I'll put it here, and then I'll talk about it after. It's good. That entire section is so well made, with the third instance of the unknown number being assumed to not lead to anything, as per the other two instances of it, instead serving as a distraction for the door to be opened, and then to the pure diegetic sequence of the entity breaking the ice to get underneath to break in, and then the multiple breaking sounds crescendoing into calm full blaring. It's just so brilliantly terrifying. The recording comes to an end with the player completely exiting and finally fully deleting the corrupted world from his computer, ending the almost torture that he had been going through for over a week now. To end the video, there is a final montage of the protagonist's world, now engulfed by fog, missing torches, missing life, and missing any semblance of player activity, perfectly encapsulates the atmosphere of the entire short film. Perfectly underscored by C418's haunting 13 track, it perfectly entraps the essence of someone leaving something they once loved, never to come back, with the contrast between the mob-filled opening screenshots transition to the still and lifeless nature of the end. It's melancholic and unnerving, but it's also kind of beautiful. Conclude, I do love the last beta player. I think in an age where most Minecraft horror projects, be it ARG or fiction or any other form of media that invokes feelings of horror, have been rather oversaturated, filled with predictable tropes, rushed storylines, or malformed endings and twists to something that is a far cry from the simple roots of digital horror of Herobrine and other creepypasta or adjacent media. This short film stands as a testament to how to make simple and effective Minecraft horror. Whilst it's nearly a year old at this point, it still stands to me as a staple of the genre that anyone leading to passing interest in MC horror should check out. Now, to answer the question, what the hell happened here? Whilst I don't have any concrete answers that I believe that the mystery is half the enjoyment factor of horror, I will seek to fill in some of the blanks. To begin, I believe personally that it was the world itself that wanted our protagonist gone, primarily due to the sheer number of otherwise abandoned or unfinished development artifacts that were used against the player. From the prototype villages to Calm 4, and even how the walking sounds that followed our players for half the video recall the scrapped Steve mobs from early development. Put up video here. It seems that the world itself wanted our player to move on from it, and began to reject the very idea of the player as a concept, refusing to give him food whilst fishing, removing the torches from his entire village to allow mobs to flourish inside it, to even psychologically toying with him with the site moving. All of this combines to show an intentionally malicious world toying with its inhabitant for some reason. The overarching motivations of the world are unknown to me. Perhaps they wanted the player to simply move on from Minecraft and find fulfillment elsewhere. Maybe it's just tired of sustaining an ungrateful tenant, or maybe it was just plain evil. Whether it's one of these, none of them, or all of them, I, in the end, do not really care. I'd rather it remained an enigma, known only to the creator as to why the world did what it did. In the end, perhaps being deleted was what the world wanted, to be allowed to decay into nothingness, to be allowed to face the entropy of time, unabated. So yeah, thanks for watching. Made this in like a day. Actually, like going schizo. Subscribe if you enjoyed. Make more, maybe, hopefully, maybe.